can get really pulled into dogma. I thought because I'm a high achieving person that I just needed to apply myself, or I just needed to organize myself a bit. And I was unwell. I'll never forgive myself for not getting that and thinking, oh, no, it happens to other people. It won't happen to me. No, it's not for me. I just need to do this. Like there's this crazy arrogance to it. So now I just treat myself with lots and lots and lots of gentleness.
Hey, I'm Tanya Wilkinson, and this is Death on the Daily, bringing the conversation about death out of the shadows and into the mainstream. Because along with birth and change, if there's one thing that's going to happen to us all, then death is it. And we're going to explore how death actually shows up for us on the daily in a multitude of ways, and how when we allow ourselves to accept and to be with death, how it can teach us a whole heap about how to live this life well. Today, I am joined by the amazing Lucy Sheridan in connection, conversation, and I've got a feeling quite a few giggles. Lucy is the world's first and only comparison coach and published author of The Comparison Cure. And we live in a world that keeps us hooked into social media and technology. And this leads us, and I am very much looking at myself here, to constantly compare ourselves to others' lifestyles and what success supposedly should look like. And Lucy's work crucially helps you to step away from this compare and despair, rooting you back into self and empowering your individual potential. And Lucy's been praised as one of the UK's most successful coaches by The Times. Her work has been featured in global outlets such as Psychology Today, Forbes, Google Labs, and she's only been on bloody Oprah. And I've worked with Lucy in my entrepreneur journey. She is my coach, and she's also my dear friend. She always brings such joy, warmth, community, and connection to literally everything that she does. Also, and crucially for Death on the Daily, with the vulnerability and openness to just be real when things are difficult, painful, or tender. So, Lucy, welcome to Death on the Daily.
Oh my goodness, I'm so happy to be here. Thanks, T.
Oh, I'm so happy to have you. So let's dive straight in, because I know you've got a lot to speak to when it comes to Death on the Daily. So let's just root into wherever you want to flow. What Death on the Dailies have been coming up for you recently, and our conversation will flow organically from there.
I would say, I think so I was 41 very recently, and having crossed into the threshold of 40, that has definitely brought a lot more falling away to my life. And I kind of felt like it would. I felt like it was a real threshold for me, that it wasn't just another birthday, like I think a lot of people do, but it was less about kind of reflecting, what haven't I done? Or it wasn't about things or milestones. It was like, who am I? I think having my daughter just like a year before that too, it really was a bit of like, if anyone's into tarot, my 40th year was like the Tower card. So a lot falling away. And that was not fun and has not been fun. And I would very much been on like a big healing and recovery journey, if that doesn't sound too grandiose. But I would say it's allowed me to kind of put back my life pieces together in the order that I want them, and to be like really sure about where I was placing those pieces. And it was just very much a kind of, I think I needed check-in with me in terms of like, what do I want the next bit to look like? You know, if I'm in like what is commonly described as midlife now, what do I want the next bit to look like? And that has really, it's rattled up everything. And I think what was particularly challenging is that for me, a lot of my almost like life assignments or lessons to learn have been through the lens of like me and work, you know, in terms of who I am, how I want to do things, how I want to live, what I want to use my resources for. But what I found like the last couple of years has done is it's meant I have been forced to look at everything that could, was a bit buried before, or like, oh, we'll sort that out later, like especially in my relationships, everything came up to the surface. So of course I have emerged, and I'm emerging as what feels like a new rebirth person from that, but it has really tested my mettle. And as part of that, obviously, like Tanya, I'm a bit witchy, and there's a lot that's sort of written about, a lot of ink spilled, as the expression goes, on like the quarter life crisis. But what people might not know is there's a big planetary, let's call it a transit, when you are coming up to like basically between the ages of 39 and 41, and it's Pluto square Pluto. and Pluto is it's the planet of depth, and it's the planet of going there, and it's the planet of and it moves very slowly. So there's that expression of like let go or be dragged. I had to almost like do the opposite, like let go and like really stand still, or like be with the pace that it was going and not try and fight it. And that really did shift my timbers, as pirates say.
Wow, Lucy, wow. And that tarot card, I mean, it's so powerful, isn't it? And that let go that you mentioned, that surrender, and to go with it when it comes to those thresholds. And tell me as well, because what I can feel is how, even though it was very difficult at times, and I'm sure there was so much going on.
Yeah.
Tell me how did you navigate that with that presence to really understand and appreciate, actually, this is what's happening for me. I'm at this threshold.
I think as well, like what I know now is that I was feeling sort of grief for what wouldn't be, and grief for like what I was letting go of. And actually one of my previous clients' name's Lisa Johnson, and she's a really gifted spiritual teacher. And along the last year or so, probably about this time, like probably like August 2023 to about now, I've had like various times of like congestion and inflammation, and like, couldn't go out anywhere without a tissue, and like sneezing all the time, just really grim. And I mentioned it to Lisa, and she said, well, you know that the lungs process grief. And I was like, oh my God, yes. I think it's also been a gluten allergy, by the way. But I think that two things can be happening with polarity. I think two things can be happening at the same time. I think that is like my body was having this very very visceral reaction to what's been happening in almost like, my mind and my soul. So navigating it is that surrender, I think, is the perfect word to use, attached to it, is that I really realized that I had to just give myself a blank slate, and the only way was going to be through. And it was way more painful to resist it or try and run away from it. So I've tried to sort of, have better habits, especially in my relationships, like communicate early and often and imperfectly, even if I'm unintentionally hurtful or, not the softest, to just speak up what's been coming, because I was finding not speaking, it was like literally like making me ill. And I would, be having these weird like argument conversations in my husband in my head, as opposed to just saying like, this is how I'm feeling, this is why I need support. And I definitely had like a bit of a tricky postnatal journey as well. So when your mental health becomes fractured in any sort of way, you have to have lots of grace with yourself, in terms of like, I would ask myself like, what's going to not make this worse? Like, what's helpful today? And that would often be like doing the bare essentials, and then ANE and nothing else. And that, for someone who's a dopamine chaser, and I am such a dopamine chaser, was really hard, because I didn't have the energy to sort of do any of that either. And like I say, when your mental health becomes fractured and needs to be repaired, the most courageous thing you can do is kind of be with that and give it the time, but also like set up the day so there is lots of gentleness and lots of kindness. And so I'm really lucky. I've got a lovely colleague, Ruthie, shout out Ruthie, who knows me really, really well. And it was really good at just kind of like just keeping me like my moods as steady as it could be as well, rather than me kind of catastrophizing. But I think what's tricky is that when there is a lot of things that you're genuinely worried about, and you are, you're responsible for like, pulling in certain things to keep the household afloat. And yet, as a business owner, which I am, like, I have to be thinking a bit ahead all the time too, but you don't know how well you're going to be when you get to that point. So that was really hard as well. And then I just sort of realized I had to just sort of be with it. And if that meant I was sort of scratching along for a bit, then I would trust my resilience that I could do that. But it was like, there was a lot of like hugging the radiator, crying. There was a lot of like me slamming doors and wanting to flip tables and all this. And I think I sort of realized that if I dimmed that down or pretended that wasn't going to happen, then I wasn't going to be able to appreciate when I heard like a really funny joke, or, when I got a lovely hug from a friend, for example. But it's only now I can really see that. Now that I'm in the, there's that expression of light at the end of the tunnel. I'm in the light now. Like, I've been looking at it for a long time, but I'm here now. But it's been like 18 months of like graft and putting myself together. and having to like reset and just doing things that are like I say, helpful, that don't make things worse, like repairing things that need repairing. And it's been really challenging. Like I didn't, I really turned my back on a lot of what I know helps me too. So I'm a spiritual person, I'm quite witchy, but I just didn't touch any of my tools and my stuff. I just sort of like walked it alone a lot. And then this is a bit out there, so not everyone's going to like connect with this, but I was doing a card pull, like an oracle card pull with my friend Benny. And we were like pulling cards for each other, then pulling cards for a friend. And we'd like, what's that saying? We're doing card pull. Do you want a card? And so we were like being two like little mystic megs, like doing like getting these messages for our friends too. And then we pulled our cards for ourselves, and Archangel Michael was all over the cards. And for anyone that isn't perhaps spiritually inclined, Archangel Michael is associated with protection and like strength and protection and the courage and, cutting cords, shield and sword, etc. And one of the excerpts from the reading was, never forget that every morning you wake up behind the protective shield of Archangel Michael. And I have just held that really, really close. And I think as well, like, I've been sort of going through a bit of death and rebirth. And then, I literally, like, my auntie died in April this year. So, and that was very unexpected, after a very unexpected and long stay in hospice, end of life care. That has really, our family is still really in a lot of pain there. And I think, when you're experiencing grief, whether it's through, like I say, like losing a loved one or the loss of something, it's really easy to be thinking like, well, what can I do? Because there's this resistance to almost like, will it swallow me like Moby Dick? And then, so what I found has helped me a lot is talking to my grief, as in like you can swallow me, but you have to spit me out again. Like if I need to have this moment, can I be okay by tonight? Just to do what I need to do, or rather than just sort of like resisting it or seeing it as a mountain. And I found that's really helped me, as well as like talking to her. Like we shared a lot of beliefs about what happens when you leave Earth, I suppose you could say. That's really helped like my personal grief, but not denying it or seeing it as something to do. And not giving it a timeline either. So when I first found out she was very poorly indeed, I had a big work day, significant work day, and I've been working up to it a long time. And I just got in touch with people. I said, look, this is the situation, and I'm really sorry, we'll have to rearrange. I don't know when I'll be rearranging for, but I just have to step back right now. Turns out within 48 hours, I was able to collect myself to say, this feels like a good next step. And they were like, thank you so much for coming back to us so quickly. So again, there's a reminder of a lot of people's compassion when you talk about death. Rather than I've got like a personal situation going on, like if you have the courage or the vulnerability to just say exactly what's going on, like it will be received so gently by people. And even, months down the line now, there's a long way for all of us to go on the journey of the grief, but even months down the line, if I feel a bit wobbly, I will be like, oh, is this me being unprepared? Is it because I haven't eaten anything, or is this because I'm grieving? And I'm like, if the answer, I can sense the answer is grieving, I am not reluctant to say, look, I'm having a wobbly day. I'm being visited by a lot of grief today. Because it's funny, like I feel like it happens outside of me. We sort of have to sort of be with it, as opposed to it's like there and it comes out, like love's inside. Grief feels like it comes from outside for me. And so I've kind of literally used that language as I'm being visited by a lot of grief today, and I'd really appreciate if we could just move this by a day or so, or I'm going to have to step back. I know the last thing I want to do is let anyone down, but I'm not okay. And I've found that I've always been met with just kindness, and that's been really important this year actually, is to be really honest about how I'm feeling and what's going on in the spaces I feel safe. Of course, like I've like touched a bit on this on social media, where I've got a presence that I enjoy, but I don't document everything that's going on in my life, because it's like, I think matters of the heart are so they're just so tender, and they don't necessarily, I mean, I know some people's outlet is to share. I'm just go a bit wild. I just like don't necessarily, certainly at the time, because that's what it feels like. It helps me. And I think you've got whatever feels like it's going to help your healing when it comes to death. I think you've got to run towards it, whether it's you want to start a whole blog documenting it, or you need to start a journal, or you just need to be with your heart and in listening mode with it. Whatever feels like it's going to be right, then I think you have to do it. And then I'd love to share this. When I was really in the depths of a difficult couple of days after she died, and my friend who, what's great is you will really get a feel for who has the courage to be in the big emotions, in the big uncomfortable, there's nothing I can say emotions. And she said, let your life be a moving prayer. And I just love that so much. And life being a moving prayer can be me sitting watching like Kevin Costner film on Saturday, like I did, because it was like really like, I wanted to watch the film for ages. Anyway, but it can also be like taking more time out of your day to pass the time of day with people, or, look after my space. I am a very messy person, but like showing respect for the space, like, getting like nourishing myself. It does not have to be about grandiose gestures. It's just kind of coming back to like everything is special to it. Everything can have a special element to it, even if you're not catching every single one. Because that's another thing, isn't it? The pressure to be, you must be present. It's like I just can't at the moment. I just can't. Like a lot of like a visual I share is a lot of what I feel like my experience has been. Certainly a year ago, less so the last 6 months, I felt almost like one of those flying monkeys in The Wizard of Oz, just like just like everywhere, like flying around somewhere outside myself. And a word I use, like especially when I'm sort of right around my postnatal depression anxiety diagnosis, I felt deranged. Like I felt deranged. You and I were joking about Victorian arts earlier, where we're like, I've taken to my bed. But I really literally felt like I felt a bit paranoid. I was having really weird, like obsessive thoughts about things going wrong and things I'd forgotten to do, because I just couldn't trust my thoughts, couldn't trust my memory to hold on to things. And sometimes I'll get, your iPhone or your phone will sometimes give you like throwbacks. And through that summer of, I think it was 2022, just when I got diagnosed in September 2022, through that summer, like I look at my camera roll or I look at these videos and I don't remember being there, because literally my neurology felt like it was just shredded. And so I feel like I lost a lot of myself in that time. And this sounds really dramatic, so I'll never forgive myself, but this was sort of like, you get really pulled into dogma. I thought because I'm a high achieving person that I just needed to apply myself, or I just needed to organize myself a bit. And I was unwell. I'll never forgive myself for not getting that and thinking, oh, no, it happens to other people. It won't happen to me. No, it's not for me. I just need to do this. Like there's this crazy arrogance to it. So now I just treat myself with lots and lots and lots of gentleness. And, one of the, I think we touched on this a little bit just before we kind of jumped on recording. Another part of the ways I've been healing and like really accepting who I am for this next chapter of my life is making sure that I'm really paying attention to unhelpful habits. So as a business owner, I've got lots of information available to me, like analytics, open rates, demand for stuff, and who's done what, who likes what, who's going to do this with me. And it's really easy to make that information mean something, but that's so toxic. So now I don't even look. Like I'll have a cursory look out of interest, but I'm not like, I can't remember when I color coded something last, and that's been a really big part of a rebirth as well, in that, I am alive and I have to live. And I've definitely been shaping a lot of my life decisions now, as in like I have to live for what I have now and who I am now and the timeline I'm on now as well, rather than like, if we do this in the future, if we do, it's like, but that is in the future, on a timeline somewhere. I cannot be living like a flying monkey trying to sort of dance around it all. I have to be here now. And I think that's provided a lot of relief too, because as well, I think you move through difficult things, not as a badge of honor, I'm strong, but you're like, I am made of really strong stuff. And I really hope I never have to draw on these reserves again. But if I did have to, I know they're there. And I think that's been a bit of a jewel of the last 18 months, 2 years or so. And like I say, I feel like I'm very firmly in the light at the end of the tunnel now, and just want to, like, almost like a bear after winter, like bump my nose out and go, is everyone okay?
You've emerged.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Crawling out of that. We talked about as well the butterfly, and how you emerge like a butterfly, and when butterflies emerge from their cocoon, in the cocoon we go into goo. We butterflies, the caterpillars literally go into a goo, they dissolve. So that's,
Yeah.
that again, and that when you're in it,
That's
but
it.
actually you come out of that, and the butterfly, the
Yeah.
first thing it does is it has some nectar, it has a lovely, lovely drink, but then it just sits and flutters its wings
Yeah.
in the sunshine. It just enjoys that rebirth, and the wings
Yeah.
have
And I think
sprouted.
I definitely am reminding myself, reminding myself to enjoy things, because for a long time over this period that I've talked about here, whenever something good would happen, even the absence of something bad, I'd be like, oh, okay, we're okay. Mortgage money's there. Going to the shops now, and I would just be in this like immediate like adrenaline like relief mode, which cortisol levels, God knows what they were. And now I'm like in a place of like, okay, we're building up a lot of data of positive things here, a lot of data. So like, just be like, woo, when something good happens, as opposed to that relief, because it's like, my system just can't take it. It just can't. Anyone that's been through any sort of difficulty, but especially when it's been like through a broken heart, or like I've said, it feels like it's a broken mind, you'll do anything to protect your peace, which goes way above and beyond like having boundaries and being confident, as in it's so precious. It's like a flame that you never want to take your hands away from it, because you realize actually that there is a fragility to that. And so, yeah, I am when with things like I say, going better, going well now, I almost feel like I'm in an antique shop and it's like, don't touch anything, you break it, you pay for it, kind of thing. But then I've got this sort of like this sort of other thought, which is there's lots of evidence you're safe now. So actually, like, just you can move through the world more, rather than feeling like there's all these like edge of the cliff views that have been sort of like just been like, I've been toe to toe with for the last what feels like a long time.
Yeah, I love that, Lucy. And I love, with your openness, what I could hear then, you describe so beautifully those different voices inside of us, isn't it? There's that side of you that's like, let's just enjoy this. We can really root into all of those, the big joys, the little glimmers. There's that protective side that understandably wants to keep your heart in a protective cage and make sure that nothing's going to harm you. And I just think it's so beautiful where you shared that. And I know that from having been coached by you as well, that way of bringing out that inner dialogue to really understand, what are those tender parts? What's coming up? What's that tension point, and actually how can you have that conversation? You mentioned earlier as well, treating yourself with that gentleness, which I can really feel coming through in everything, how you just give yourself that grace, that gentleness as you journey through.
Yeah, because I'm like, just can be such a bitch to myself. And I don't think I'm the only one there. Like, one of the horrible toxic thoughts I had before I had my diagnosis was, I had this voice that was going, oh, you've really done it this time. Oh, you've outdone yourself this time. And I was like, oh my God, shut up. What are you talking about? And that's, I'm better at catching that now, but I think I'm busy doing good things. I'm not keeping myself busy. Because I increased my capacity like bit by bit by bit by bit. And we were chatting about this earlier, like, I have got a lot on. I'm not burnt out. I'm not dreading any of it. I don't look at my diary and go, sharp in, take a breath. I don't open my eyes in the morning and go, oh God, please, just let everything be okay today. I don't have those anxious feelings anymore. That's not to say they won't come back. I'm sure they will. But when that happens, I will expect it and accept it, as opposed to trying to fix anything. But like I say, when you've had a time of feeling a bit broken, when things are good, you take the wins. Take the wins everywhere you can.
Yeah, exactly that. Really, really root into and connect into them. As well as what I can feel from what you shared earlier as well, is those lessons and those integrations that come through. Because actually, and tell me, I suppose when we root into that gentleness, when we root into the boundaries that you're setting, when we root into sort of this rebirth of you, tell me how much of that has been, I suppose, fueled through those moments of whether it's grief, and I guess that sort of the depths of that pain, and obviously everything that you went through from the mental health side. Let's bring some of that into the spotlight, whether there's any interconnecting threads there.
Well, I certainly feel like it's been, the question has been like I've had to sort of pose to myself, really. Now I'm thinking about it through that question, is like, how open can I be to this? Because if I'm not being open to it, I'm resisting it. And that's often where a lot of like things get worse for me, basically, as a rule. If I can just like take the pause and sort of, be really gentle, it means that my life tends to have like a better ecology, because there's that expression, isn't there, which is like, how you do one thing's how you do everything. So it's like, if I'm going to be gentle with myself, it means I get to be gentle with others, which also means I can open to them being gentle with me, because I will give people the benefit of the doubt all day long. I am like a golden retriever. Like, yeah, that's fine. No, not as a pushover, but I know sometimes I make mistakes. I know sometimes I'm misguided. I know sometimes I don't make the right call, and I will need grace back. So I give it out in bucket loads all the time. And I think then when it came to kind of like, the grief that I've experienced most recently too, in terms of like how you do one thing is how you do anything. It's like, well, I'm not going to judge anyone else for how I think they're grieving or not, because I wouldn't want that back either. So I think that's been really key too. And it goes back to that old adage, just like treat people how you want to be treated. But if I could treat myself more kindly, what would that look like? If I could take the pressure off, if I could like just do what's helpful, what would that look like? And my client Katie Gerwell is a really gifted therapist, and she specializes in internal family systems. And one of the questions, one of the practices, I suppose, she was just telling me about a client case study while we were working on something, and she said, at least practice telling yourself the truth. At least practice telling yourself the truth. If you can't say what you need to your mother-in-law, or if you're really struggling to find the words or find the way through dealing with a situation at work, at least like don't fob yourself off and, attach blame perhaps where there isn't any, or if there is blame, fine, attach it. But that, I think, is the cord that runs through a lot of this, has helped me stay sort of, to use your lovely word, like rooted. Mm-hmm. And consistent in that rooting too. So when something good happens, it's not like, oh, brilliant, it's all over. It's kind of, more good stuff. But when I'm still sort of like walking through treacle phase, it's like, well, another week on the treacle walk. Here we go. And I think that is, that's not a plateau, like being resigned to it. But there are like these times, not just about planetary transits, but like I said, when I opened my chart and I saw Pluto everywhere, I was like, I was like, I'll have to just be with this, because it's not going to be forever, but it might be for much longer than I want it to. Mm-hmm. But then I suppose the other side of that is, if the more challenging times can't be given a time limit, then the really good times can't be given a time limit as well.
Very, very true. I think that is the power, isn't it, of this, when we can, because you're right, when you shared earlier, it's not about saying, I'm going to be fully present in this as I'm walking through that treacle, as I'm rolling with the grief. But actually, it's that connection to it and that understanding and that awareness where we can then give ourselves grace and say, actually, I know I'm walking through treacle right now. I know that I'm not always going to be present. And sometimes I need to disconnect and watch a Kevin Costner movie. Yeah. Whatever it is, that's just going to be the gentlest for myself. But I think that is the real power in this, is the awareness that you bring to it, you brought to it. And also that awareness that we are human. And it's all good. And then that awareness and that truth of it, because actually when we can be true with ourselves, we can, have the, I guess, real talk with ourselves.
Oh, completely. And another sort of perspective that I found really helpful too, is that because difficulty will come to us all and death will come to us all, I've kind of felt like this is like a rite of passage. I am now joining in with those that have had to grieve. Joining in, like I'm seeing it as joining in, not like it's a party, obviously, but I am in the room now. I belong to the group of people that are holding grief right now. So even though I may not know them by name or know the specifics or have any understanding, there's absolutely no way that I'm the only person here, even on the hill in the peaks. I'm the only person. There's no way I'm the only person here within a mile radius that's grieving. There's an element of that too, which is not that we have to absorb the feelings of others, but that through the experience, like we get to remind ourselves we're not alone, even if that's not much comfort when we are in real depth with that too,
That's so beautiful and so needed, that energy, because you're right. I think that we move forwards, means that actually when you are grieving, it's easy to think, am I the only one here? What's going on? Because no one else is talking to it. And that's what I love in you is you're just so open to speak to. And as you shared with your, with you sitting in that seat of power of actually, this isn't right for me to be talking about on social media right now or ever. But even in that sort of everyday conversations, or even in when I've been speaking to you about my grief with my daughter, just how open you are to that, and to being there, and to your point of having those friends in your life where you know that you can just be real with them, and you don't have to put a mask on, you don't have to pretend, okay, well, the world says that it's 2 weeks after the funeral and therefore I should be over this by now. I love that, your openness in this space.
Oh, thanks, sweetheart. I feel the same about you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Lucy. And I also wanted to tune in because obviously, so much of your work, and particularly when it comes into the comparison space, and you talked to as well around when you're going through the treacle, or you're in those moments. I would love to hear from you any advice, because what I really felt when I was in that, I mean, I called it, because I went through death and birth all in one. So I call it my contractions of grief. And it was that thing. I had one good day, or not good, okay day, and one terrible day. But I remember social media was a really big one where I kept getting dragged in there and then looking. And as a small business owner, again, you mentioned this earlier, having that thought of, mortgage, what do I need to be doing? Looking at other coaches and businesses and thinking, well, they're launching stuff, I should be launching stuff now, versus giving myself that grace and that compassion in that moment. So I'd love to hear from you if you have any words of advice for our listeners who maybe are feeling grief, feeling pain, feeling anything tender that's coming up right now, and need to just take that step back and really look after themselves. If you've got any words of advice for anyone who then is sort of feeling like the world is still traveling and they've almost like stepped off that travelator and they've been left behind.
That's a really great question. First of all, I'd say there's nothing small about your business, Tanya. So that's what I'll say first. All right. You need to see what we all see. But in terms of that too, like I would go back to, not to be platitude, but there's this, I think it's a quote by Rumi, which is what you're seeking is seeking you. So if you are having to take time out for grief because you need it, like if you broke your leg, you would sit with your feet up. If you are taking that time for grief, know that you're not messing with any timelines. Like nothing can be taken away from you. The rug will not be pulled out from you. And so don't fear that. There isn't just one chance for everything. Like this life is not all sliding doors moments. And actually the fact that you've taken time out will probably open up even more moments of presence for you, where you can see opportunities, where you have clearer creative ideas, because you're not resisting the fog of just trying to pull through and push it down. Because when it comes to like big feelings like grief, they can affect all sorts. And we start to mislabel things like, oh, I'm not confident anymore, or I'm not clear anymore. And then like you go to, push a door instead of pulling it. You're like, I can't even open a door. It's like, no, you have not allowed yourself to be with this, and it can't hurt you. It cannot hurt you, even though it can be very painful. Like we can be with it, and that takes a lot of courage to be with it. Of course it does. But I think any of us that kind of like worried about time running out, it's like, it's not. You control the timelines, and 2 weeks or 2 months or even 2 years doesn't make that much difference. And you'll meet your business and the market and your customers exactly where they're at with who you are there too. I also think these big emotions, grief, love, it's not an emotion, but money, they make us more of who we are. They bring out our strengths even more. They make us perhaps more aware of like our tender points, or like, non-strengths, let's say. I don't really think any of us have weaknesses. And I think if you can be with that, it's not you'll come back stronger. You can even use your grief. You can use your grief to be productive. Absolutely not. But it will give you such a strong feeling of who you are and what's important to you, and what you cherish and value and hold true, that you will bring that into what your next business decisions are. And you can't disappear. For one reason or another, grief definitely being an ingredient of it. But I haven't really been online since May, June. And now, as we're talking live, it'll be September in a couple of months. So here I am running a business with very patchy social media presence, which is so important for my visibility. But I've just had August will be my best month ever this year. So it's like, it just goes to show, like, when you have a business, you build a body of work and no one can take that away. If there's an interruption in momentum, it's an interruption. It's not the end. It's not the end. We all have days like that. It's like, this just isn't working. I'm going to go on LinkedIn. I'm going to get a job. Like, it's not for me. I need some part-time work. I just can't do this in this way. Don't ignore that. There'll always be more pathways to get to where you want to. But I think it's also a fact that there are those days when everything comes at once. It's like you get a narky email in the morning, then your iCloud goes down, then your train's cancelled, and then this, and it's like, oh God, they're late paying their invoice, and it just all comes at once. And it's like, what am I doing moment? And it's just a really shit day. And they can last a little while. But I think it's so important that when we're taking time out to look after ourselves and go gently, it's not just our business that benefits from that as well. It's our mates, it's our pets, it's our partners, it's our siblings, our family members, our colleagues. They will all benefit from us feeling true to ourselves and robust, even if it's messy, even if there's snot involved. Like, have the vulnerability to really go there. You'll win because you'll be being true to yourself, no matter if anyone else sees it. Fuck them.
I love that. I love that. Even if there's snot involved.
Especially if there's snot involved.
Especially if there's snot involved. It's all good. Permission to be messy. And I love that because I remember when we were working together, I mean, this sort of veers off of the death conversation. We were working on my first group launch. Yeah. And I remember you gave me permission to be messy. And in a world where everything looks so neat in those squares on social media, you were like, it's all right. It's all right, babes. Like, you're doing you. Yeah. And it all worked out great. And I think particularly in those moments where things are tender, where we are going through, because also, as you mentioned around that threshold of 40, and actually in these thresholds, it's not just the physical loss of one of our beloveds, it's also those thresholds that can come through. And actually, even you saying that, I've reflected on the fact that actually I suddenly just thought then, I was like, I think I'm a bit melancholy. I have the two sides, but I definitely feel a bit melancholy when it comes to every single birthday. There's something about that number, and I'm never going to be that number again. And again, that thing of what did I achieve? What didn't I achieve? Where are the big pain points, the upsets, the griefs, as well as the celebrations. But there's definitely a tinge of that as I go through that threshold.
Yeah, I feel that too. And and I think that comes with the pressure as well. Like, you have to like your presents, you have to want to go out for a meal, you have to. And then if I don't go out for dinner, I'm like, oh no one wants to celebrate with me. I'm like, oh, this is ridiculous. Calm down.
It's that pressure, isn't it, that we put on ourselves that sort of adds to it, doesn't it?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. And when it comes to those thresholds as well, let's just root into, because I think there's been so much powerful insight that our listeners can take away from this episode. I mean, I'm taking so many different nuggets away. But let's root into those, because obviously, there are thresholds big and small, and there are losses big and small. If you were to give our listeners any advice around sort of, I suppose, navigating life with that gentleness that you mentioned, what would you say? How could they do that?
Well, I do think a big one is you can't make a bad call. It's like, not making a decision is still a decision. So I think set the intention for what's meaningful for you in that threshold. Like, for example, I was like, let's see. And then I did see caller. She saw everything. But I think if you can set like the intention for what you want it to feel like, or what is important to you, that's really helpful, because then you can go back to those things as opposed to just feeling like you're sort of drifting along. I think as well that sometimes in life, when it comes to thresholds or, crossroads, those things we kind of come up to, that sometimes you'll have clarity and you'll take action, but more often than not, you'll take action, you'll get clarity. I know action feels like quite a nebulous word, like we use it all the time, but you'll do things, you'll have certain behaviors, you'll make certain choices that will reveal more of the path to you. And I would say just be really open to what you see there, because I know that, like, if you push and pull and strive and take the bull by the horns, etc., you can squeeze the life out of everything. Momentum, because you're constricting the pace of things. Ideas, because you're not giving yourself space for more information, new information, new decisions, or the space to be creative and look at things creatively as well. And also reserve the right to change your mind. Like, as much as in my life and business I'll have plans, I had established like a big thing I was going to do next Tuesday, but I spoke to my lovely collaborator about it yesterday. I was like, look, we're a partnership. So I want to run this past you. If it was me, I'd just do it. But obviously this is not going to work like that. But here are the reasons why I think we should change the time. It's like, yeah, cool. Just put it in the diary another day. Love it. And we'll do this instead. So I think as well, it's like we think we have to, these big expectations. It's like, just don't worry about that, because actually there's probably more and better coming too. Because I feel like I've lost a lot of naivety, and there's in like spirituality, there's this idea of like maiden, mother, crone, and you don't have to have children to occupy any of those. It's a way of being. It's about a maturing, a maturation. And I feel like any remnants of maiden I had were sort of like slapped from my hands. And now I am a mum, but even if I didn't have kids, I understand that I am in a place of maturing, of like knowing myself. And I think, yeah, I would just want to take the pressure off having to kind of have it all sorted. Reserve the right to change your mind. Reserve the right to change how you go about doing things too. Because like what I've kind of said just before we kind of logged on, Tanya, I am just very actively disrupting my behavior. Like if I've always done something, I'm trying not to do it again. If I've always like, had fun in this way, I want to have fun in a different way. And disrupt is bringing a lot of newness and creative energy to things, which is a real relief and feels like such a tonic and like such a nectar when things have just been really hard.
I love that. I absolutely love it. And as you were speaking as well, I was thinking also to those where it's those big, the seismic changes, those big thresholds, the grief, but even that just allows, because actually it isn't, we always try and make everything so linear in this life. Nothing's linear. Grief isn't linear. Life isn't linear. Crossing these thresholds aren't linear. And actually through not having that linearity, it is allowing you to really root into, as you mentioned at the start, sort of circling back in the circular way that I love these conversations to go, to really rooting into who you are as you're crossing these thresholds. I think it just allows that space. And as you mentioned, then you can be that disruptor and you can really switch things up and bring that energy in. Absolutely.
I'm back to chasing the dopamine now.
And understanding when's the time for that. When do you want to go on that chase like a greyhound? When's that rabbit coming out? You're gonna just chase it.
Exactly, that's what it's like.
Oh, I love that. I love it. Well, Lucy, it has been such a joyful conversation. I have loved it. Everything from honoring your dear auntie to talking about all of those thresholds and everything that comes up in them, including those moments where you are really, really walking through that treacle, be it sort of in those sort of chapters opening up in life, or obviously from your mental health. Now, in Death on the Daily, this whole show is honoring death and impermanence. And within that, we also need to come to a very purposeful ending to our conversation. But before we do, I would love for you to share any final words, as well as sharing where our listeners can connect with you, can find out more about you and your work.
Oh, thank you, Tanya. Well, I would just like to say just my warmest and softest thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. It's been absolutely gorgeous. And yeah, if people want to come and come and find me, I think probably Instagram's the best place, and that's at Lucy Sheridan.
Love that. Love that. Check out Lucy's offerings. And Lucy also is so generous in everything that you do. And I would say, yeah, definitely. And particularly for small/not so small business owners, entrepreneurs.
Things, Tanya, big things.
Big entrepreneurs, I would definitely say get Lucy in your orbit. Having Lucy in your corner, it's just you've been such a joy in my journey. And so on multitudes of levels, I am so grateful to you, and I'm so grateful that we've had this time in connection through Death on the Daily as well.
It's a pleasure. Can't wait to see you soon.
All of my gratitude to you for joining me for another Dead Conversation. Death on the Daily is edited by David Strutt. The music is Set Free by Katie Gray. And I am Tanya Wilkinson. And if you enjoyed this episode, I would be over the moon if you can rate, review, and subscribe. It really, really helps me to get the word out there. And if you want to say hi or to hear more about my work as a coach and death doula, including how I support my clients to navigate their death on the daily, then all of the ways that you can connect with me are in the show notes. I'll be back soon with some more Dead Conversations. And in the meantime, take good care of yourself and others.
There's a cold fire, there's a crossfire, and there's something